This is not a podcast for comfort. It's a podcast for clarity. In a culture flooded with noise, dangerous narratives, and emotional uncertainty, this space exists to examine what actually matters and what actually works. Here we question power itself, belief systems, and the assumptions most people inherit without inspection. Most people accept instead of dissect. This podcast is about correcting that. Welcome. Bienvenue. Welcome. Marhaban, bienvenidos to the Magnificent Ones podcast. Most people feel behind right now. Behind in a career, behind in money, behind in life. But being behind implies that there's a single race that's being ran, and there isn't. What's actually happening is misalignment. Our goals may not be matching our environment. And when skills don't match efforts or incentives, then your effort is applied in the wrong direction. When alignment's off, even your hard work feels like failure. Now picture this. If a hamster is running on a hamster wheel, it doesn't matter how fast they run, how hard they run, they're not going anywhere. And that's what a lot of us are doing right now. That is what we're simulating. We're putting all this hard work into certain things, but it's not going to amount to anything because that's not the thing we're supposed to be doing. And so the concept of being behind is something that we should dive into and look at it, dissect it, unpack it, whatever terminology you want to use. So there's 3 points that I want to make. First point is the concept of being behind is a lie. The second one is alignment creates an unfair advantage. And then the third point I want to kind of bring up is just my personal observation of things. So let's go into the concept of being behind is a lie. Being behind is a lie because it is a comparison and not a factual term. So say that, the expectation is you go to college, you have a career, and you buy a house and you have the 2.5 kids. Well, that's not going to be optimal for everyone. Is the housing market the same as it was 10 years ago? Is it the same as it was 50 years ago? Is it the same that it was 20 years ago? The answer is no. So the expectation can't be the same. You can't compare yourself to something that like as I said, the game has changed. So we can't operate by the same rules if the game has changed. The housing prices right now they're ridiculous. If it was 30 years ago, the housing market's better. 20 years ago, it's better, as I just noted. So you have to define what success is for yourself, not what society says success is. So define it for yourself, and then after you define what that means to you, not what the world says it is, then you determine if you are where you need to be. If you're living a life in which your actions, they have intent and purpose, then you're living a very fulfilled life and you know your own trajectory. If you're not doing that, you don't have a roadmap to follow. And if you're not on a clear path, you don't know if you're closer or further away from where you need to be. The world, has shifted. Technology, speed, incentives, and expectations. Ask yourself, how have you adapted to this changing world? And if you haven't adapted to this changing world, then how do you know that you're behind? If you're still in the analog ages, how do you know where you actually are? If you're working in an industry where technologically you haven't, made certain, adjustments that you've needed to make. Maybe you're a business owner. Maybe you're the person that advises. Maybe you're a consultant. If you're not with the times, sure, I could say that you're behind in the sense of you have not caught up, but are you behind? Because maybe your business model works for you. I don't know. You have to make those decisions yourself. Many people are playing by old rules in a new game. Figure out what the game is and make those adjustments. Until you do, you won't know if you're behind, if you're actually behind, because you need to have something to measure it with, and not with other people. As I've said before, define what success means to you and how you're going to get to your final destination, your point at which you'll feel fulfilled in life. And that's not, it's not a matter of like being lazy. When you're going through this phase, maybe instead of thinking that you're behind, maybe you just need to recalibrate. And I think if you take a moment to recalibrate and define what success is to you and set realistic goals, I'm not talking about New Year's resolutions. I'm talking about tangible, actionable things that you can do, that you can measure and say, hey, by October of this year, I want to save $3,000. I don't know what financial situation you're in, but perhaps that is something that you can define as success. Maybe you need to scale it. Maybe you need to save $30,000. But create a situation in which you have a roadmap to follow. Because otherwise you're just aimlessly moving, and maybe you'll hit a wall, maybe you'll fall into a hole, metaphorically speaking. But you need to know where you're going so you can set up necessary things to get to that point. And so when your role and your values and your strengths don't line up with what it is that you're doing, your effort feels heavy, and it gets exhausting emotionally, it gets exhausting physically, because you're not able to go to a destination. You're wondering, why am I working so hard? Why am I putting in such long hours and it's not amounting to anything? You work harder and you get less feedback. And that creates anxiety. It doesn't create it doesn't create progress, right? Because you're working hard and you think, logically, if I'm working hard, that means I should see progress. But if you're working towards nothing, you will not get any progress. So then you do feel, the sense of anxiety. You do feel depressed. You do feel those things. You do feel behind because you don't know what you're doing. You don't know where you're going. So take some time to show up for you, invest in yourself. Take some time to have those tough talks with yourself. Go get help if you need. Maybe you need a life coach or something. Whatever it is that you need, take some time to make sure that you are the best version of yourself, so that way at the end of your life, you know that you did all that you needed to do to be where you needed to be. And sometimes things aren't going to work out. And that's just how it plays out. Sometimes, when your skills match demand, the demand of what your work is asking for, you see that, your progress accelerates. The same person that works hard in this environment may work, just as hard in another environment, and it doesn't take them the same distance or the same destination, right? That's just how it is. Sometimes people have the same work ethic as you. Sometimes they are just as intelligent as you. Sometimes they're just as skilled as you are. And you see them working in a different industry and you're like, man, this person's really taking off. Well, that's because they're in their element. It has nothing to do with, necessarily what it is that they're doing. It's their environment. They're where they need to be. So you have to figure out where it is that you need to be so that you can also experience your version of success. There was a point where you thought you were falling behind. And I'll assure you that you're not falling behind. The moment you fall behind is the moment you stop trying. In reality, you're applying yourself in the wrong direction or measuring yourself against the wrong standard. Measure yourself against the standard that matters most. The ones that you can actually measure, not the one that your parents tell you to measure it by, not the one that society tells you to measure it by, but the ones that make sense to you. The standard that you create for yourself, that you can hold yourself accountable to. It's hard to hold yourself accountable for other people's expectations and their standards. But it's easier to hold yourself accountable to your standards and your own expectations. Trust me, once that clicks, your feeling of pressure will definitely change. Because you could be working hard now, putting the same amount of hours, same amount of effort, but you're going somewhere. So there's less stress, less anxiety. It doesn't mean that you're not working hard anymore. It just means that now you're putting yourself in the right environment, the right mindset to be the best version of yourself. And I hope that makes sense. So if you're a person that is feeling behind, don't ask, what am I missing? Ask, where should I be right now and what should I be doing? Ask, what am I being misaligned with? Like what is the thing that's not lining up? What's causing this friction from allowing me to accelerate and progress and move forward? Fix misalignments first. And I promise you, once you fix the things that are misaligned in your life, progress will follow afterwards. Most people don't need more time, and they don't need more talent. What they need, maybe it's you, maybe what you need, is simply just to be aligned with who and what and where you are. Because when a person masters themselves, they can then master their environment. If this podcast challenged you, good. Clarity often does. The point here isn't consensus or reassurance. It's to leave you more precise than when you arrived. Keep what sharpens your thinking. Discard the rest. But don't confuse familiarity with truth. If this conversation mattered, follow the podcast and share it selectively with people who value depth and not noise. Until next time, stay disciplined with your thinking, selective with your attention, and honest about what you're really optimizing for.